In many parts of Papua New Guinea, tribal land and the people who depend on it are inseparable. For generations, the land has sustained them and provided for all their needs. The people understood the importance of land as the source of life. Tribal groups went to war to secure communal rights over large tracts of land. Despite land acquisitions by early missionaries and successive colonial administrations, unofficial estimates suggest that 90% of the land is still collectively owned by customary landholders. While a transition from the traditional to the modern is occurring, the lives of many Papua New Guineans still depend heavily on the land. For a vast majority of people, the formal cash economy makes up only a small part of their lives, and in a nation with no state-run social security system, customary land offers people the security and the confidence they seek. Thomas Negins is a coffee farmer who has more than 1,000 trees on his land. His family makes money when coffee prices are good, but when world prices drop, the land still provides for his basic needs of food and shelter. Papua New Guinea's communal ownership of land is sometimes difficult for outsiders to understand. Until recently, landholding clan groups were not recognized as legal entities who could conduct business transactions using customary land as assets.
And so we need to go through that process first for Papua New Guinea. All the land-owning groups in Papua New Guinea needs to incorporate so they become a corporate body having legal personality. From the Land Task Force, we recommend strongly for the incorporation of Land Group Act to be tightened up so there's no bogus land group being created and all that.
This situation is further compounded by the vastly different customs in coastal areas and the highlands. But the traditional lifestyles of many Papua New Guineans like Thomas are changing. The demands of the modern economy have put increasing pressure on subsistence communities to shift towards a clear demarcation of landholders. The move towards land reforms has been painful for this country of 7 million people. Since the mid-1990s, land reform attempts have been viewed with suspicion.
Previous attempts had led to disastrous consequences. The latest one preceding that was in 2001 when the government proposed land reforms and the University of Papua New Guinea students went on a demonstration, and it ended up with 3 students being shot.
The Papua New Guinea government under then Prime Minister Sir Mekere Marauta specifically targeted customary land as a key area of reform. The decision was met with staunch opposition from non-government organizations and student groups. After the demise of the Marauta government in the elections that followed, the politically sensitive nature of the issue made it an unpopular policy matter for government and individual politicians. Opponents of customary land reform have long argued that such moves would result in a land grab by educated and wealthy citizens and foreigners. While government is pushing for reforms to free up at least 20% of customary land, civil society groups are demanding better management of the estimated 3% of state-owned land.
Now yet people look so government control him look out him good is 3%. Use him to make him come up good development on top long. And careless to mass, no got good record, only abuse him power, only misuse him to ground, give him go come about. Nah, this la ground we use him, bring him come back and good development or send his come state na come couldn't touch him on man Mary. So suppose 3% him no manage him. How about me trust him ground blow me? Na 97% blow ground blow all get a man Mary los la country, you go government look out him. Suppose him no long, look out him 3%.
The pressures that Papua New Guinea faces as a developing nation are immense. Investors on the one hand demand land security, while customary landholders remain skeptical of any move to free up land for development. Successive governments have struggled to satisfy both the increasing demands for more land and the aspirations of its landholding citizens.
With PNG, you'll note everybody is a landowner. And then the problem then becomes how do you, who then stands to speak for the land? So many issues. You find women missing out. And somebody will stand up and talk and say, I am the landowner, and all of a sudden you've got hundreds of others saying that same piece of land, we all own it.
Port Moresby is a bustling city of 500,000 people. Every day, hundreds of people leave their villages in rural areas and flock to the city in search of jobs and what they perceive as a better life. This rural to urban migration brings its own problems. Many of those who come to Port Moresby end up in settlements like this one on the edge of the city.
This lap nami place tab lots of settlement 8 million place tab ya. Kaman ino look sabe na utoko semo pa katim bat. Bianol katim na to kol bagim pla wara pawai kamses but no gat this something no katim ke kapsen istabo santas.
Many of those settlements are located illegally on customary land or the limited government land available. Like many other urban centers in Papua New Guinea, the absence of effective control mechanisms has contributed to the uncontrolled growth of illegal settlements.
We have a situation here in the city where we have a lot of immigration coming to the city, and they need access to land to build houses and so on, and the state needs access to land, and also investors coming to our city needs access to land, but state land is almost diminished now. And then we have our traditional people here who, not by choice, have been forced into the, a cash economy.
Uncontrolled settlements, crime, and the emergence of urban poverty in Papua New Guinea's towns and cities are among the factors that triggered the drive towards a land reform program. Papua New Guinean land experts argue that poverty will worsen as the population increases unless more land is freed up for development and there is proper land management.
And at the moment we are enjoying high economic growth at about 8 to 10% per annum, driven mainly by the resource extractive industries like mining and oil and so on. That's not going to last. What we need is broad-based economic growth, and the huge economic GDP growth rate that we're experiencing is not enjoyed by the wider public. And we can see in the poverty levels, in the problems that they're facing in terms of access to health and education and so on. So what we need is more broad-based economic growth. And broad-based economic growth will not happen if we do not attack land issues and have addressed and bring more land into the market through a land reform program.
In 2005, the government organized the National Land Summit. This was the first bold step towards the creation of a homegrown land reform program. The summit sought direction from Papua New Guineans on the type of land reform required.
We actually recommended that this be a broad-based partnership between various institutions and not the one agency taking the lead, because land reform requires a partnership approach. And so the minister agreed to that and appointed me as the head of the organizing committee for the Land Summit in 2005. So the Institute of National Affairs, University of Papua New Guinea, the NRI, Lands Department, and a few other government departments, we met together to organize the summit in Leh.
Based on the outcome of the summit, the government established the National Land Development Task Force. Their final report contained 54 recommendations and a proposal defining the implementation of the National Land Development Plan.
There are a lot of recommendations from the Land Summit, but it fell into three major categories. One is to improve the land administration system. The second component was in terms of the land dispute settlement mechanisms. At that time, we found out that there were about 5,000 or 6,000 cases, in one particular province, outstanding land disputes that need to be resolved. And so the court systems were not working to resolve land disputes. And the third mechanism is, how do we bring customary land into development?
In March 2009, 4 years of work culminated in the passing of amendments to 2 pieces of legislation aimed at mobilizing land held under customary tenure. While passing of the amendments has been successful, the overall implementation of the land reform program has been slower than expected.
It's very difficult under the former secretary to get the Department of Land to take ownership of that program.
Also, the National Land Development Plan was not incorporated in the 2008 and 2009 budgets, and the development plan has not been implemented as a coherent package.
The idea was that once the National Research Institute is finished with the recommendations and produced an implementation plan, that it would really be the Department of Land would take ownership for the implementation. That has not happened. And so the Department of Land had never really become an active partner, participant, as a team member in the group of state agencies that are involved in implementation.
The biggest obstacle, though, is, I think, the bureaucrats. The bureaucrats seem to be the ones who are not able to interpret and convert the political vision into some kind of, translate into viable projects and viable activities that we will have in terms of land reform. What we are hoping is that we can create some broader thrust of group of people who would be able to better advise the government, but the political vision needs to translate into a political will.